It was supposed to be the happiest day of my sister Lily's life, and the darkest day of mine. The hall was glowing with golden lights, chandeliers swinging above the laughter of guests, and music floating like perfume in the air. But I was not among the shining faces. While Lily wore her diamond dress and received blessings from everyone, I stood behind the curtain, carrying trays like a servant, ignored even by those who had grown up with me. My parents never called my name, never asked me to sit beside them. They smiled proudly at Lily, showering her with love, as if I didn't exist. I tried to smile, to hide my tears, but each moment felt like a blade cutting into my skin. I had spent my childhood protecting her, helping her with studies, covering her mistakes. Yet, on the biggest day of her life, I was invisible. The final blow came when my mother introduced Lily to the crowd as their only shining daughter. My heart broke in silence. After the wedding ended and the music faded, I walked home alone. Nobody noticed my absence. Nobody cared. I shut myself in my room and looked at the mirror. The girl staring back was not the weak shadow they thought she was. My eyes burned with a new fire. That night, a promise was carved into my soul: I would return. Not as the forgotten sister, but as the storm they would never forget. The following weeks, pain turned into purpose. I started remembering every insult, every careless word, every moment they pushed me aside. My diary became a battlefield, each page filled with plans. I watched Lily's perfect new life on social media, honeymoons, gifts, praises, and instead of jealousy, I felt clarity. If she was the queen, I would be the shadow ready to strike when the crown slipped. I began listening carefully to my parents, their business partners, their fake smiles, their secrets whispered late at night. They thought I was invisible, and that was their mistake. I collected names, dates, numbers. Every detail mattered. Soon, I found others who carried wounds like mine: a cousin denied fees, a neighbor humiliated, an uncle pushed away. They spoke to me, and unknowingly, they joined my hidden army. Still, I needed power, money, information. I found someone online, a quiet man who didn't ask questions. He gave me tools to dig into accounts, recover files, and capture evidence. One by one, I built a collection of proof: screenshots, recordings, even raw footage of the wedding, where I stood like a servant in the background. Nights were no longer for crying. I stood in front of the mirror, whispering to myself, "They erased me, but I will carve my name on their skin." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. The forgotten daughter was gone. What remained was the beginning of revenge. Weeks turned into months, but my promise never faded. Each day I woke up with one thought: they will regret making me invisible. My parents walked around with their proud smiles, boasting about Lily's new life, while I quietly sharpened my weapons in silence. They had no idea the girl they erased was building something dangerous. I started watching Lily more closely. Behind her glittering posts, I saw cracks. Arguments with her husband slipped through, and comments she quickly deleted. A smile too wide in photos hinted at something forced. She wanted the world to see her as perfect, and that was her weakness. Perfection is fragile, and I was ready to shatter it. I kept gathering proof. My online contact recovered hidden files, emails, financial records, voice messages my father thought he had deleted. I stored them all carefully. Some showed lies in their business, others revealed betrayals in their friendships. The more I collected, the more powerful I felt. It was like building a tower of secrets, waiting for the moment to crash it down on their heads. But revenge is not only about evidence, it's about timing. I didn't want to scream in anger and be ignored. I wanted silence, patience, and then an explosion so loud they couldn't cover it. So I trained myself. I learned how to speak with confidence, how to walk with authority, how to hide my emotions until the right second. I studied people like a hunter studies prey. Then came my first test. My parents hosted a dinner for business partners. I was supposed to stay in the background serving food, but instead I dressed simply, walked in with calm steps, and joined the table as if it was my right. My mother's eyes widened in shock, my father's hand froze on his glass, but I kept speaking politely, sharing small pieces of information I accidentally knew. Their partners were impressed. My parents forced a smile, but I saw the fear flicker in their eyes. For the first time, they realized I was not so invisible. That night I felt power in my veins. It was only the beginning. I decided my revenge would not come in one strike, but in waves. First, I would break their pride in front of their friends. Then I would show the world Lily's perfect life was a lie. Finally, when they had nothing left, I would stand before them and make them see me not as their daughter, but as the storm that destroyed everything they built. Every step I took from that day forward was calculated. Every smile, every silence, every word was part of the play. My family had written me out of their story, but now I was holding the pen. And I was ready to write them an ending they could never escape. The first crack appeared sooner than I expected. A rumor started spreading in Lily's social circle, small at first, like a whisper carried by the wind. Someone claimed her husband was seen late at night with another woman. Lily laughed it off online, posting pictures of her perfect marriage, but the seed was planted. People looked closer, questioned more, and the glow around her began to dim. She didn't know it was me who planted that seed, using the information I had collected and passing it quietly to the right ears. Meanwhile, my parents grew restless. At dinners they kept me away, but I found ways to leave subtle hints that unsettled their guests. A careless smile, a comment too sharp, a glance that suggested I knew more than I should. They couldn't confront me in public without exposing their own weakness. Slowly, their proud confidence cracked. But revenge isn't just about breaking images, it's about control. I wanted them to feel me everywhere, even in silence. So I began leaving traces. An envelope on my father's desk containing a copy of his secret transactions. A USB in my mother's purse holding recordings of her cruel words. No note, no explanation. Just evidence that someone was watching. They looked at me differently after that, suspicious, uneasy. But they couldn't prove anything. That uncertainty was my power. Lily, on the other hand, was crumbling. Her fights with her husband became harder to hide. She deleted posts, blocked comments, tried to mask the truth with forced smiles. I watched from a distance, calm and patient. People who once adored her now whispered doubts, and every doubt was a thread I had pulled. One night I tested my strength. At a family gathering, surrounded by relatives and neighbors, I stood and spoke about loyalty, betrayal, and truth. My words were sharp but polite, coated in sweetness but heavy with hidden meaning. Faces turned uneasy, eyes shifted toward my parents and Lily. They forced laughs, but the silence that followed was louder than any applause. For the first time, they felt what I had carried all my life, humiliation under smiling eyes. When I returned to my room that night, I didn't cry like before. I smiled. The girl who once begged for love was gone. In her place stood a woman who held the strings of her family's fate. My diary now looked less like scattered notes and more like a map, each page leading to the final destruction. The storm was building, and they didn't even realize they were already standing in the middle of it. The night of the charity gala became the turning point. My parents were hosting the event, surrounded by powerful friends, business partners, and socialites. They wanted it to be another display of their wealth and pride. But I had prepared something different. Quietly, I had arranged for a short video presentation to be played during the dinner. They believed it would highlight their donations and generosity. Instead, when the lights dimmed, the screen filled with recordings, my mother's cruel laughter about relatives she despised, my father's voice bragging about bribes, Lily gossiping about her own friends with poison in her tone. The hall went silent, then gasped. My parents froze, their smiles collapsing. They scrambled to stop the video, but it was too late. The whispers had already begun, and no amount of excuses could erase what everyone had seen. I sat in the corner, my face calm, my hands folded, watching their empire of respect burn. For the first time they felt the fire of humiliation in front of the same crowd they once worshipped. The aftermath was chaos. Business partners pulled away, friends avoided their calls. The flawless image of our family shattered overnight. Lily cried publicly, insisting she was betrayed, but people only mocked her tears. My parents tried to find the source of the leak, but I left no trace. I was the ghost inside their walls, and they couldn't catch me. At home the air was heavy. My father shouted, my mother broke things, Lily locked herself in her room. They glared at me with suspicion, but none dared confront me directly. They feared what else I might know. And that fear gave me more strength than any confession ever could. Still, I wasn't finished. The gala was just the beginning. I released small pieces of information online, documents of fraud, whispers of affairs, proofs of debts hidden under luxury. Not all at once, just enough to keep the fire alive. Every week a new spark, every spark another blow to their crumbling pride. The family that once erased me now lived in shadows, terrified of the next attack. But revenge is not complete until it is personal. I wanted more than their reputation. I wanted their eyes to meet mine and recognize the storm they had created. So one evening, as thunder rolled outside, I stood before them in the living room. Calm, steady, fearless. They shouted, demanded answers, but I only smiled. "You never saw me," I whispered. "Now you'll never forget me." The silence that followed was more powerful than any scream. For the first time in my life, they looked at me not as a shadow, not as a servant, but as the one holding their fate. The house that once echoed with proud laughter now stood in silence, broken like its owners. My parents avoided the outside world, too ashamed to face neighbors who once praised them. Lily's husband had left, tired of the scandals and the whispers. She sat in her room for hours, scrolling through comments that mocked her perfect life. Everything they had built, wealth, status, respect, was gone. And in their downfall I stood tall. But I wasn't finished. Revenge without closure is only half a victory. I needed them to feel what I had felt that night at Lily's wedding, the pain of being erased, the humiliation of being invisible. So I planned one last strike. I invited the same relatives, neighbors, and family friends who had witnessed my humiliation years ago. I called it a reunion dinner. My parents resisted, but curiosity and fear forced them to attend. They arrived nervous, their eyes darting, their faces pale. Lily followed, broken and bitter. I welcomed everyone with calm grace, dressed in simple elegance, standing in the place they had once denied me. The dinner began with silence. Then I stood at the center of the hall and spoke, not with anger but with truth. I told them the story of the forgotten daughter, the girl who was erased from her own sister's wedding, treated as less than a servant. I spoke of the pain of growing up unseen, of being called worthless, of being erased with a single cruel sentence. And then I looked directly at my parents. "This is what you created," I said softly. "A daughter who learned silence so well she turned it into a weapon. A storm you never saw coming. You tried to erase me. Tonight, I erase you." Gasps filled the room. People stared, not at my parents, but at me. For the first time, I was not invisible. I was the center, the name they whispered, the story they carried. My parents sat frozen, their faces drained of all pride, their power stripped away. Lily wept quietly, her hands trembling. When the dinner ended, guests left in silence, their eyes avoiding my parents, their respect gone forever. And as the doors closed, I stood alone in the hall, breathing deeply. The storm was over. In the mirror that night, I no longer saw the weak girl I once hated. I saw a woman who had burned her own pain into power, who had written her name in fire across the story of her family. I smiled, not with cruelty, but with peace. My revenge was complete. They had erased me once. Now the world would remember me forever.